now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game of Nodes, the podcast by independent validators. Total of 2 today, myself and Schultzy. Welcome, Schultzy. It's a beautiful morning here in Australia. It's cold as shit, and I'm tired and hungover.
I would take cold any day of the week right now. I'm just basically just pure sweat right now. Like I'm wearing this like really light linen shirt, and I'm still just like sopping wet.
Soaking in it. Welcome to our 2 viewers. So today we're doing something a little bit different to our usual format because we've got a few guys off today, and we thought it would just be fun to raise up an RPC node so that people can reference this back if they want. And actually, this will be the most up-to-date information because I haven't updated the docs on Juno yet after the Phoenix 2 rise. So actually, it doesn't have the correct information. And people, I get it questions. Where's the Genesis? What's the binary number? Okay, man, I'll update it. I'm busy. I've got gone things to do. So maybe I'll just point them to this video, give them some timestamps, flick through to here.
Yeah, put in this command at hour 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. 4 hours and 35 minutes, command 3.
Yep. What's interesting about this is going to be, I'm sure we have a lot of similarities, but I bet there's a lot of differences also. And so we're going to be able to talk about like, why do we do this instead of that? Why are you doing that? Why are you crazy? That type of thing. And one thing that's important to know about this is we're going to spin up an RPC, and it's probably going to take the first half hour of this stream or something, maybe even less. My first node getting set up probably took 12 hours, maybe even longer, because you're like, what is even happening? And then once you start getting used to it, like even the fact that you're starting off in a terminal right now, like that's doing pretty good. And I can tell you use power level 9000 and iTerm and probably all my ZSH with that.
Yeah, definitely. So this is like, this is recommendations on terminal stuff because, I've always just been like a vanilla, whatever comes with the, distribution terminal. Never really, what is it? Just Virgin Bash, no whiz bang. And I recently changed over to a MacBook, and took some recommendations from the guys at Gone, and ended up with this sweet ass terminal setup, and absolutely does nothing more for me than what it used to, other than I know what directory I'm in.
I mean,
and what branch I'm on.
You can tab to complete things pretty well now, though, is the thing. And that's pretty important.
Well, yeah, tab complete is like that. I just mash tab all the way through making commands. Like I'll press tab 10 times on the same command, just finishing the directories, because it's right. You like type the first 2 letters of something is there, and you just hit tab instead of typing the other 10 letters. It's just you're there straight away. And
well, I mean,
it's incredible for things like when you're looking for like, I don't know, a service and you don't know what's there, you just smash tab a couple of times and you get a list of like all the things that start with that name. So that's great.
I mean, it becomes a crutch at some point. Like I'll be typing in like /Etsy, and I'll type in the E and start hitting tab, and I'll hit tab like 4 times forgetting there's another directory, and I'm like, why isn't it going? What's going on here? Instead of just typing etc. It's like half the time you use more button presses just doing the tab than typing it yourself.
A great thing with like you can just type etc, man. Like it's not it's like that is getting there in terms of laziness that just ends up costing you more time. But when you've got like a string of directories and they're all empty, just smash tab and it just automatically fills them. It's great. Just tab. Particularly
but that's an example of what I'm talking about, though, is where we're going to go through this really quick, but tab filling, like most people don't know about that, right? So they're going to get started, and they're probably going to see you hit tab, and it just autofills, and they're going to be like, what the hell did you do? Did you just copy and paste? Right? And it's just those little things that as we do more and more and more, like eventually I could spin up an RPC node in probably 10 minutes, right? And somehow
I think I can go, probably manually typing everything and downloading everything. I can probably be there in maybe 10, 15 minutes. It's maybe quicker some days. Depends on which one it is and how well I know it. But I mean, so to everybody listening, like the Cosmos chains are more or less the same across the board. They all follow a very similar procedure. Some of the app chains have like some different whiz-bang things about it that require some additional configuration. But as far as Juno is concerned, it's pretty vanilla in the setup. It is pretty identical across the chain, across the Cosmos. So this is a good example of how to do it, you know, and be able to replicate it on most chains. So the only thing that really will change will be the network name and the binary name and where you get your Genesis file and peers. So today, though, I'll just give you like a quick overview of what we're going to do. We've already raised up a droplet. We were going to do that on the stream, but because it's like in my corporate DigitalOcean and because there's other things in there that I don't want you to see, you can't see that part. So hi Soy2 Studio, good to have you here, man. So what we're going to cover off then is logging into the droplet, and then we'll start doing configuration. So we're going to be configuring a non-root user, and we're going to make them sudo, and we're going to add a certificate to them for logging in with SSH. For those who don't know what a certificate is, an SSH certificate is basically, it's got two parts. So you've got a public key and a private key. Your private key is loaded into your SSH on your local machine, and your pub key you can put on servers that you want to connect to in the authorized keys file. And what that means is that you no longer need to use a password, but you can have a password as well if you want. But that's more to do with decrypting the pub key on your local machine. So
and to break it down a little bit more, SSHing is secure shell. So what it is you're basically opening a shell on the server that you're looking into in your terminal. And secure shell just means like it's encrypted side to side. Like it's,
yeah. So what we have on the screen at the moment is just my empty shell in my home directory on my MacBook. Okay. So when we want to connect to a remote machine, we use the SSH command here. So I think DigitalOcean gives you a root user out of the box when you start a new node. So we're going to try that. You know, you can try and connect to this node if you want to be a pain in the butt or DOS it or whatever, but just don't because it'll just make life difficult for me. So we'll try to connect here, see what we get. So we need to add the fingerprint. So when you connect to a remote shell, it'll give you back a fingerprint of that remote node. And basically you can add that to your local directory. And then if you try to reconnect to this node later on and someone else is trying to do a man-in-the-middle attack or something and can't give you the same fingerprint back, then it'll give you an alert. It'll say, you know, you're connecting to this SSH, or this IP address. It doesn't have the same fingerprint as it did previously. You know, we're not going to connect. So figure it out. So if there's a legit reason for that, you can just remove the fingerprint out of your SSH config. Do you remember where they kept? I think it's just in .ssh, and it's called, I don't know.
.ssh/authorized keys, I believe.
Authorized keys is the keys that are. Is that it?
I think
hosts. So. It's in hosts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. So it's .ssh/hosts is where it keeps all these fingerprints. Tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not gonna throw down on that right now. Like there's probably other things I'll throw down on, but I'm not gonna draw the line in the sand. 12 minutes into the stream.
We're immediately just. I would load up my like I'd show it, but I don't want to show it.
I was gonna say that too. Like just list it real quick, and I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, so we could cat it out, but I mean, I probably should have just made a quick different user here to use so I can cat those out. But anyway, for people who don't know it, no one hosts. There you go. I suppose Todd knows. Todd always knows.
Yeah. So odds are, since Todd's here, if we say something incorrectly, more than likely he'll be correcting us. He's actually like, I'm not gonna say that I'm not good at security, because I consider myself pretty good. But I'm not on Todd's level. Todd's like audited code bases and stuff to ensure that it was security compliant. I haven't audited for security before.
I imagine that we are going to do a number of things that Todd is just going to be at cringe station level 9,000. You'll just be like, what are these people doing?
Meanwhile, we're going to be all pleased with ourselves about it.
Yeah, we're like, we're teaching people shit. So to everybody who does end up watching this, look, there's many ways to skin a cat. That's an Australian term, I think. And basically it just means there's a bunch of ways you can do the same thing for anything in DevOps, right? So this is one way. This is one of the ways I do it. I'm sure Schultzy might have slightly different way. You can automate this entire process, but that wouldn't, like if I just loaded up a script and hit go, then nobody would learn anything. We won't actually skin cats, Mad Cat. It's just a figure of speech.
That's why we don't let Pikachu on here, because he would just automate it, and we would say, all right, run the stream. Okay, the stream's over. He's done. He's already loaded it all out.
Everyone go home. You saw some stuff on the screen. So I think Pikachu could probably boot up about 100 nodes in the time that it takes us to even finish talking about what we're going to do today.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what do we talk about? All right, non-root user, make them sudo, give them a certificate. Then we're going to go and turn on the firewall, because we're not using the DigitalOcean firewall. So this can look a little bit more realistic about what people might be able to do on a similar setup, but without the cloud stuff that's provided by DigitalOcean. So we're just going to use the built-in firewall on Ubuntu. We're going to quickly add SSH to the firewall before we get booted off and then can't log in anymore, because we were talking earlier, and Todd might know this, but when you turn on the firewall, it should close off all the ports, because it's not configured with any open ports out of the box. And SSH, you actually need to add to it to open the ports while you're connected to SSH. And there's a good chance that might result in you being booted off and then not being able to log into your server anymore. If that happens, we can load up a terminal through DigitalOcean and then quickly just add that SSH port to the firewall. But I don't think that's going to happen. We'll wait and see.
And that's only true for DigitalOcean. There are some providers that you can't shell into. So if you get kicked off, you're just like, I guess I'm nuking this server and starting up another one because I'm locked out.
Yeah, I've definitely on multiple occasions buggered my sudo as file and had a no root login for SSH and not being able to get back in.
Yep.
Because you type anything wrong in your sudo as file and it'll just say that it's invalid and then no longer work for any of the other configured users. It just says, no more sudo and then that's it. You can't use sudo anymore. So you have to be able to log in with the root user. And if you've turned it off, then you can't get in. You just have to nuke the thing and start again.
Which, to be clear to people listening, that's not something you have to modify often. So like, don't be afraid because we're saying that. Like that, it's fine. Don't let that like discourage you if you're thinking, oh, this is my time to shine.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna add like stuff to your sudo as file, make sure that you know like you have something that's previously worked and you can just copy paste in there, because typing it out, if you like miss a colon or mistype something, it just won't work anymore. So knowing working, copy pasta. is the way to go there. Anyway, let's see if we can log into this thing. Ah, crap.
And probably because you're trying to log in for too long.
Yeah, timeout, I think. Oh, no.
Did you give it the wrong puppy?
No, well, it might not be... maybe it's put in a different user.
Is it Ubuntu? At
Hey?
164? Is it Ubuntu at 164.92.130?
I think it does Ubuntu. Ah, crap. This is a good start.
and this is exactly why the first time I started going, it took a solid 12 hours. Because it's just now I can get it going and this won't be an issue. But like when we're trying to set up, a staging environment to do things, that's whenever things like hiccup like this, right? But this isn't conventional.
So, Shilty, do you want to talk a little bit about the sizing of the node that we've got here, just while I try and figure out what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this node specifically, it's going to be an Ubuntu droplet. Droplet is basically the name of a server from DigitalOcean. They just call them droplets. Version 20.04, just because that's kind of standard. It's a long-term service Ubuntu server. With 16 gigabytes of RAM and 320 gigabytes of NVMe storage. That's actually a bit small for Juno. Typically, I want to say at least 32 gigs. And the reason for that of RAM, the reason for that is because with CosmWasm, you can actually put in enough memory that 16 gigs will basically lock up, which is actually one of the reasons why we're on, I think, Uni 4 now. So Uni 1 to Uni 2, which is the Juno testnet. Frey and Ben 2x4, I think, attacked the testnet with a faulty smart contract deliberately and halted the testnet because most people were running the minimum requirements, which is 16 gigs, and then everything just halted. And so there's no way to start it back up, and we had to go to Uni 2.
All right.
Go ahead.
So my fix here is to just nuke the node, and I'll start it with a password. It's probably more realistic to start it with a password anyway and change it to certificate. So, I know why it's not. Oh God. Just 1 second here, folks.
SSH add. You're doing SSH copy ID? Is that what you're doing?
Hey.
What's SSH add? I don't do that.
I just need to add the private key to the SSH keychain.
Okay.
Dang it. Well, that's makes no difference now. Live. All right. So, I mean, my SSH key should be there now. So I'll have to go and change my information. I don't think anything sensitive was on there. Should be all right. Todd, did I just disclose anything sensitive?
I think it's just your butt key.
Yeah, it's just a location of my key. But all right. Anyway, it is password encrypted. So let's go. Okay, so I've got a new node up. Let's try this one.
So Badgerbyte just wrote in the chat. Is that James in there? That's watching. I'm talking to Badgerbyte, who's in the chat. Is it James? Because James is very knowledgeable on sysadmin stuff. So this will be interesting whenever he starts chiming in.
Has the clock started, or do you count having the password? We're not actually racing a clock. I was going to do this fast, but I think it's better for people if we just be able to talk about what we're doing and do it a little bit slower. So if people want to come and try and raise a node themselves, they can do it and use this as a little bit of a guide. If they can, like, filter out all the talking. But anyway, let's get into it. So what do we got here? We Okay, so we're in as a root user. So let's start, Schultzy, by creating a non-root user. And I think we will just use Juno as the username. So we're just going to add user Juno. And basically, this will just give us a new user without any permissions or anything. Give it a password. If you can't see what I'm typing down here.
And it's pretty normal to name your user after the network. So if you're running a Juno RPC, then you'll be running on Juno. For Cosmos, you probably name it either Gaia or Cosmos. It's just a way to keep track of what users you have. Often you'll have probably 2 or 3 nodes on the same server, and so it's helpful to have them distinguished across different users.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we do as well. I usually call it the network name, not the actual, well, when I say the network name, I mean like Juno-1, or I just call it Juno 1 or Harpoon 4, or, you know, instead of the, yeah. I mean, for a test, I do that mainly because of testnet servers where I've got multiple testnets running on the same one, and I might even have 2 from the same network. So if you call it like, you know, Uni 3 and Uni 4, then you know which one you're on. Or even if you're like, if you're connecting from a mainnet node to a testnet node, you know, a lot of time I just like SSH and then start pressing up until I see the network name that I want to connect to in the history. But you might accidentally connect to a testnet node that still has the username Juno, so it's just easier to have Uni 3 and Juno 1.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, then you know the network that you're connecting to.
Well, now hold on. That raises a question for me though. Does that mean you're not using the SSH config file?
What do you mean?
So there's a way to be able to like, rather than saying SSH space like Juno-1 at 162.92 whatever, blah, blah, blah. You can just say SSH Juno, and then it just knows everything and all that.
Yeah, like I've got profiles set up, but I don't really use them.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they're like set up, but I just don't use it.
Yeah. No, they're my absolute favorite. As soon as I get a new server or whatever, that's the first thing I do, because just cutting out those last like 6 characters is just very satisfying to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a list of nodes in my, like, in a sheet, and I just, every time I change something on a node, I just update my list. It's like my process, because I run on like a disposable node philosophy now. So all the nodes that I create are disposable. They don't, you know, they can come and go, and we just keep adding them into Horcrux or whatever. And so the IPs change a lot, and I just found it a pain in the butt to maintain the profiles. It's much easier for me to just copy the IP out of my sheet, really. So I know it's the right one. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to give sudo permissions to this user of name Juno. So did you want to explain what sudo is, Schultzy, to the uninitiated?
Ooh, okay. So sudo basically means super user. It effectively just means like you have access to do anything on the server you could possibly want. If you want to delete the entire server, great, you can do that. But sudo is just an easy way to kind of signify those permissions, that acceptance of being able to do it. If you use a Windows machine, there isn't really an equivalent. Like in Windows, you can have an administrator user, but even that doesn't have the same power as sudo. Sudo is quite literally like, if I tell you a command to do, you do it, and you don't talk back, basically.
It is God mode.
It's like God mode, yeah.
Yeah, so you can like sudo can access everything. Doesn't matter what the user permissions are on any of your users. Sudo can get there and it can change things. So, root can get there and change things. So what sudo does in a nutshell is just give you root permissions by adding sudo to the start of commands. But to be able to use those commands, we need to give our user sudo permissions. So let's do that. And that's done. So I'm actually just going to switch user to Juno. And let's start by adding a SSH authorized key, hey? And then we'll log out and log back in with our authorized key and see if that works. So where am I at? So I'm going to CD to the home of Juno instead of our root directory. And then we're going to make directory SSH, and then we're going to, I use nano. All right. So don't hate on me for that. So we're going to,
I'm normally a Vim user, but for some reason, Hetzner is like their support of Vim I found to be really poor. And so I've just started using nano. Vim, for some reason, like it just, I don't know, maybe the buffer's wrong or something, but like you'll try and copy something and it'll like, rather than add it in, it'll start copying over things that are already there. It's just, it's a wreck.
I have no idea how to use Vim and no desire to learn.
That's fair. That's fair.
So what I'm just adding here is my pub key. There's no point me going through and showing you all those letters. It doesn't even matter. You can't do anything with it. You can just add it to a server and then I can log into it without a password. So Control X, yes, save. Oh, crap. SHH. Oops. Yeah, it's early, guys. SSH. I'm sure the keen-eyed saw that. So we'll try again. All right. So the reason that wouldn't let me save it is because the directory SHH didn't exist because I didn't create it. So now that we've got all that done, I'm going to exit out of all of these. And then we're going to connect back with our Juno user and just make sure we can get the connection. It's going to ask me for a... Okay, it's not going to ask me for a password.
Well, you already added your SSH key, so you should.
Yeah, it's just sometimes even when you've added an SSH key, it will still ask you for a password unless you specify to use the key. But anyway, it worked. So just to make life easier, so I don't have to keep typing sudo, I'm actually just going to switch back to the root user. We do that with sudo su.
So this is something differently than what I do. I do sudo -i. I don't actually know what the difference is. James, do you know what the difference is there?
Sudo -i, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of sudo su, I do sudo -i. I don't know what the difference is.
I mean, yeah, sudo su's been around for quite a long time. I don't know. I don't know about the sudo -i.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So what were we up to? So we've added a certificate. What do we want to do? We'll turn the firewall on. So UFW. What does that stand for? Ultra firewall.
I think ultra simple firewall. Let me check.
And I'm going to be stuffing up all of the UFW commands because I just always do. I think it's enable. Yes.
Yeah.
So it gives you the warning. So then we can do UFW status, and it'll tell us that we've got just active and that we don't have any ports added there. So we're just going to do UFW enable. And I think this might work.
I think that's UFW add SSH or allow SSH. UFW means uncomplicated firewall, by the way.
Okay, so we've added those rules. So if we do UFW status again, we should see, all right, we've added port 22. It's not going to boot us off. I was going to add the other ports that we're going to need, but I think we can just come back and do that later on. So what I am going to do is I'm going to edit the sudoers.
Ooh, before you go on, I want to say one thing. So at this point, when you activate firewall, for people listening, this is whenever I will open up a second terminal and make sure you can still SSH in, because this is like the perfect opportunity for you to lock yourself out. If I've locked myself out, it has always, always, always been right now. Part of the reason because I changed the port from 22 to a different one, but this is the prime time whenever you lock yourself out.
So you're saying you would usually disconnect and reconnect just to be sure?
Nope. Is that what you said? I would always create a second terminal. So that way I'm still logged in here, right? In case I can't log in. Open a second terminal, SSH in, I can log in, great. That means I can move forward comfortably.
Okay, let's bugger. I'm just gonna YOLO. See if we stuff it up. Should work. It always works. Let's hope it still works. So we're going to add our user, and this is not necessary, but it just makes life a little bit easier with less typing. So I'm just going to add Juno as a passwordless sudo, just so I don't have to type the password every time I type sudo.
I actually didn't realize this was a thing. I'm really excited about it.
You didn't realize until recently, did you say?
No, I've never seen this before at all. So I'm just stoked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I would just type the password in.
Oh, yeah, man. This changes things. So I just copy pasted that, folks, because I use the same guide every time I do this, and I just copy paste the command so that I don't stuff it up. Because if you stuff up this file, you can no longer use sudo, which isn't a huge problem just now. But if you lock your SSH out from your root user, and then you have a broken sudo as file, when you log in as a non-privileged user, then you can't switch user to root. You're completely locked out of root forever. So you need to, well, are you? I think, yeah, because you can't sudo su. So yeah, you're locked out. So make sure this is right, and you should be all good. So someone's probably like cringing at this, going, "What are you doing?"
I know, right?
So Badgerbyte says, "System control restart SSH will not kill existing SSH sessions when changing port." Thankfully, oh, that's nice. Thanks for that. Righto. So what are we up to? So we have done that. That's cool. So now whenever we use sudo as the Juno user, we won't have to enter the password. What else were we going to do? We got to, all right. So now I'm going to change the SSH settings. So at the moment, guys, what we're doing is we're just hardening the node a little bit. So this is just changing certain settings just to make it harder for someone who is trying to connect to the node. So it's all security related. You want to try and avoid users that people know exist. So almost every new Ubuntu node that's created is going to have a root user, right? So the goal here is that we remove, and that's the most important user. And if someone's just sitting there brute forcing that user, if you don't have something like ban to fail installed or something like that, which actually rate limits the login attempts. If you don't have something like that and you have the root user on there, someone can just brute force it until they get it. If it's a strong password, that might take 8 years. If it's a shit password, it could take 5 minutes. So in this process, we're just trying to like eliminate some of these easy avenues for people to be able to try and hack your node. So the couple of things that we're going to do is we're going to remove the ability for the root user to log in with SSH. We're going to remove the ability to log in with a password. So if you don't have the private key for a user, when you try to log in and you've got passwords enabled, it'll just default back to password and you can try to log in with a password. So kind of defeats the purpose of having that stronger key pair security. So we're going to turn off passwords and we're going to turn off root login. So, and we're going to turn on certificates. Well, certificates should already be turned on.
This is another point where you can lock yourself out. If you turn off passwords and you only allow SSH, but then let's say your computer dies, but you didn't back up your SSH key, that means you're locked out of your computer. So if you're going through this, you got to make sure that you're backing up your SSH key, just so that if worse happens, your computer dies, you can still get in, you'll still have access. For that reason, a lot of people typically have 2 SSH keys or have multiple computers with different SSH keys, just so there's like a lot of redundancy. And if something goes wrong, how can you still get in?
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do here, the first setting we're here changing here is permit root login. We're not going to allow that anymore, so we're changing that to no. We're going to change pub key authentication to yes. Well, we're going to enable that setting, pub key authentication yes. So that means we can log in with pub keys, which we already can. Must default to yes. And we're going to, oh, well, actually, it's already enabled down here. There you go, folks. Sometimes these have same settings in multiple areas in these files for some reason. And sometimes you would just come in here. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see all these settings actually change to the bottom. So I'm not sure if this does this in some kind of order, if it just goes through and changes them in the order, and then whatever's last is, you know, what happens. I'm not sure. However, so we've disabled root login, we've enabled password authentication. Now we just need to, oh, hang on, sorry.
On.
God.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. God, it's early. So we're actually going, this is password authentication, and this is the one we need to change to no. So this means that people can no longer log in with a password. So let's save this, and then okay, so this is the part where if you've done something wrong, you may lock yourself out. So we've configured the SSHD config file, and now we're going to restart the daemon. So once we restart the daemon here, if we've bugged anything up, if we log out, we might not be able to log back in again. So I might actually just do what you said here, Schultzy, and when I restart this, I'm going to just quickly open another terminal and see if I can still log in. That's a fantastic idea I've never thought of before.
That is 100% a reverse Psi original.
Okay, so was that? Sure. See what happens. Beautiful. There you go. So we can get back in. That's nice. All right. Well, how about I think that's about all we were going to do on the security side of things, unless anybody else has any other suggestions that we don't regularly use. Schultzy, do you have any suggestion?
I mean,
of course, there are, by the way, just a bunch of other things that you can do. Like you can use 2-factor authentication. You can use any number of different, like you can have a YubiKey authentication. It takes a little bit to set up, but there's a bunch more things you can do.
Yeah, fail to ban is a good one, but that I don't think it needs to be set up right now. I think what you've done here is basically like, if you do just these minimal things that just happened on stream right here, then you're going to protect against the vast majority of attacks. You're going to be more secure than most nodes already, as silly as that is to say. So
I think we've gone from like a security of about 3, I guess, depending on how good the password was for that root user, to probably like a security of 7 or 8. Like Schultzy said, you can go fail to ban, which is another layer of booting people off trying to log in and stuff like that. But I mean, this is reasonably secure in my opinion. Okay, so I'm just going to exit out again of that, back to our Juno user. So what I've done there, like when you do sudo su, that's actually a command that you can exit out of eventually. So we're exited out back to that, and now we're back into the Juno user, and we can tell it changed color. So let's start off then we're going to start doing the node stuff now that we've wasted heaps of time. We're 40 minutes in, and all we've done is load up a droplet and do some security.
Yeah.
Oh god, we're terrible. So I'm just going to quickly update the. Oh my god, that went straight through. So we're just going to quickly update things and make sure all our packages are up to date. So this is just using all of the DigitalOcean mirrors, so it should be pretty quick. And then we'll install our toolchain. So guys, you didn't see the command there probably, but that was just sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade with the Y flag, and the Y flag just means that you don't have to type Y and enter to confirm. So
and we're going this is another part of security that is really understated. You should be updating / upgrading your node, like your packages, fairly regularly. Normally 1 month is considered sufficient, and then you have to restart your server afterward in order to like get all those packages updated. Because a lot of them, they just have security patches built into them. So the longer you go without actually updating the packages, the more security vulnerabilities that you are subjected to. So doing this to start off with is just one more layer of security.
Just being up to date. So Badgerbyte says, I live and breathe tab completion. We were actually just talking about this before we started this stream. And huge fan of the tab completion. We overuse the crap out of it, and we just tab everything until you get what you want. So we might put some examples later on of just mashing tab to get lists of available files, and a bit of tab completion. It's a bit of fun, but yeah. So for reference, guys, like we said earlier, these nodes can be spun up really quick. We are sort of taking the time to discuss various aspects. We're 40 minutes in and have done virtually nothing. So righto. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to install what I'm calling our tool chain. So what that means is that we're going to need a few tools, a few little applications for Ubuntu that are going to allow us to do things like build the binary for Juno, and also we're going to make sure we've got Git installed, which it already will be. We're just going to install JQ as well. JQ is, what is it? JSON query, I think is the name of it. So that just allows you to sort of use various commands on JSON, whether it's just prettying it up or trying to extract some values from JSON. Super handy when you're running a node. We use it all the time. Awesome program.
And JSON is, one second, I want to chime in real quick. JSON is, it's just a way of formatting data. And that's basically all data that you get off of nodes is generally JSON. And so if you're using nodes, you'll generally be reading and using JSON. Like the Genesis file, which is absolutely necessary, that's in JSON. So it's just a very nice command to have available.
Definitely. So Badgerbyte says, failed to ban is excellent, but changing SSH port from standard port will mitigate 95% of SSH attacks. And he is absolutely 100% right. So that is something we didn't do, but it's it's pretty easy to change. It's just in that same SSH config file. You can just, don't use 222. That's also really common. Change it to something a little more obscure, and then just add it to the UFW like we did before. Pretty easy change and good security hardening. And thanks for that extra tip, Badgerbyte. So anyway, let's sorry. So Crony, do you know what Crony does, Schultze?
You know what? I did at one point, but I can't say that I do now. I'm pretty sure it has to do with something like clocks.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the clock. It's more accurate or something like that. If anyone knows what the hell Crony is, let us know. We use it all the time.
Okay, so you don't need, this wasn't a test. This was you actually asking me.
Yeah. So, look, that's probably pretty bad on our part, but I'm pretty sure it's a more accurate clock thing. Someone suggested we use it one day, and it's always been used ever since. And since we put it in the Juno docs, it's like propagated to many, many other networks docs.
Really? That is fantastic.
So anyway, let's install these things. Away we go.
Crony is an implementation of the network time protocol. It's an alternative to NTPD, which is a reference implementation of NTP. Wow, that's helpful. Basically, it's for changing. It's a command line interface program which can be used to monitor Crony's performance. What? Like that? I'm pretty sure that's like goes against a definition. A definition isn't supposed to be self-referential. You can't say Crony is used to monitor Crony.
Well, we're told it's better for timekeeping, so we're gonna.
Yeah, there you
go. Okay. Oh, damn it! I've got to stop doing that. So what we have just done here is just download the Go. So we need to install Go now that we've got our toolchain. So every Cosmos network is going to need Go. I usually just use the latest. I'm not 100% sure that 18.2 is the latest, but it is the one that's in the Juno docs. And we tend to keep that reasonably up to date. I think every time we go through and do an update of any of the configuration in here, for whatever reason, we always just add the latest Go in there as well. It's pretty backwards compatible. So the first part is to download it. We've done that. So if we just have a look in our directory, we'll see that we've got the tar.gz file there. So we're going to use sudo and we are going to use tar, and we're going to just extract this to user local and go tab completion. So there you go. That's a pretty good usage of tab completion. We know it started with go1. So we type go1, press tab, boom, got the whole name of that file without having to type it out, which is nice. Not going to go through all of the flags for tar. If you want to know that, just press tar-h and you'll be able to read all about it. Okay, so now that we've got, we've actually installed the Go binary now. So that is not going to enable us to use it. We need to add some configuration to our profile. Oof. Okay, so this is just copy pasting this configuration directly out of the Juno docs. So this just defines some paths for the Go binary and Go home directories. So we're just going to save that. Anytime you change your profile, your .profile file, you need to source it. Otherwise, it won't do anything unless you actually log out and log back in. So we were talking about the switch user command before. So if you switch user from another user, say you switch from root to Juno, it won't source your profile. You have to type source profile, .profile. Otherwise, you won't get any of the functionality of that profile. So anyway, let's do it. Now we should have, what happened there? No, it should work. All right, so now we should have access to that. Okay, so the next step we're going to do, now that we're more or less set up, go
all of these directions are in the Juno Network doc site.
At the moment, I'm literally copy pasting out of the docs.
Yeah, so you can totally follow along. I don't have YouTube open, or else I'd post a link in there. But you can see everything that's doing, and there's descriptions for why this is happening in the docs as well.
So we'll just, I'm going to bang this in there. This is what we're following at the moment.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to paste this one in. So this is just going to clone the Juno repository from GitHub. And that just means it's going to copy the whole thing to our local drive here. So we're going to change directory into the Juno directory there. And then this has git fetch, but I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's even required. So this is a bit of an experiment.
It's not required. If you download the repo like fresh, then it'll already be loaded up. Get fetch won't do anything.
Yeah, if you just download it, if you've just cloned the repo, you definitely do not need to fetch or pull. So, all right. Now, the documentation is wrong. The current binary that we're up to on mainnet, and we're going to this would be the same if we were not syncing from start, which we're not going to do. But the current binary is V9, and Phoenix started on V9, so you could sync from scratch with this configuration. But we're going to use a snapshot, or we might even state sync. We'll see what we get to when we go to that. So we're going to check out V9, and then we're just going to make install. So some people will do make install, some people do make build and then move it to the Go directory. I'm just going to do make install because it's easier. And
yeah, whenever I see directions that say make build and then CP, I'm like, literally make install is just make build and then CP for you. What? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I guess, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people do that. There could be maybe like because they're different profiles in the like in Go, but I imagine they're both the same, just without a copy.
Having written enough of these make files for different networks, I can tell you definitively that is the one difference.
All right, Schultzy, do you think we should set up Cosmovisor as well?
Absolutely not. That is a bad habit they don't need to get into at the start.
Okay, let's not do Cosmovisor. It's not a heap more configuration, but yeah, I mean, you're probably better off to do upgrades manually, I guess.
I mean, I don't know. I used to use Cosmovisor, but I don't anymore because there are too many times where I'd be like, okay, I got Cosmovisor set up, I'm good to go, and then I'll check in the upgrade, let's say 20 minutes after, but Cosmovisor required that I need to like restart it for some reason. And with the least recent upgrade with Kujira, I know that at least 3 other validators like had to manually fix their Cosmovisor while it was trying to upgrade. So I don't trust it. That automation, it can, nope, it's out.
Look, man, every network upgrade is at 3 a.m. for me, so I rely on Cosmovisor sometimes.
That's fair. I'll give you a pass if it's like 0:30 in the morning. But for me, it's typically like, you need to get up at noon and deal with an upgrade. I'm like, okay.
You need to get up at noon. So I do have like, if there's an issue, usually my PagerDuty will start screaming at me if the network starts and mine doesn't. I guess the only pitfall is that if I'm not present for a particular upgrade, and I'm there for most of them, but for example, I don't know, maybe it's a Friday night and I want to go have some drinks with my friends, and I might not be able to wake up at 3 a.m. or I might not be home yet. So it's not always possible to be present.
Well,
anyway,
I think there's one thing worth mentioning here too as well, which is that downtime slashing is insane. It's like 18 hours for most networks that you can be down, missing every single block in a row. And if you don't, if you hit one block in that time, you can miss 18 hours straight, and that's how long it takes to be slashed. It's not like you miss 1 hour, right? So if someone gets downtime slashed, it's typically like, I don't want to say gross negligence because like things happen. Like I think Jabby was slashed very early in Juno because he got COVID and was in the hospital for a week. So like, yeah, okay, like I'm gonna give you a pass there. But if you miss like an hour in your upgrade, it's not the biggest deal.
There are some validators out there that have been slashed on multiple networks, and I'm baffled as to how that happens.
Yeah. I mean, what almost happened.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I think it almost happened like 2 days ago on Juno, right, or 3 days.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
That same validator? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't don't know, maybe just stretched too thin or doesn't have rope. Like if you've got any kind of monitoring, surely you're going to know that you're missing. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that's not something we're going to touch on. Like, so what we're doing right here is we're just setting up the node itself, but there's a lot of other periphery things which take your like your node running from like fine to like outstanding. So like we're not touching on tender duty, which Blockchain wrote for like if your node goes down, it'll text your phone, it'll call you, it'll text you, it'll push apps, it'll send you an email, like, like wake you up and tell you, hey, it's time to get in action. There's server monitoring tools like Zabbix or Prometheus, so that if you miss a block, that you'll know. If you miss a governance proposal, then you'll know. What am I missing? Half-Life, which is Discord notifications for notifications. I know I'm missing things, but that's just a quick off-the-cuff example of things that take like validating to the next level that just isn't being addressed right now.
And we can definitely visit some of those things probably on a different podcast, like another day. We can look at some of those monitoring solutions and various different things of what you can do as an operator to improve your setup. I think we're going to run out of time today to do anything like that the way we're going. Sorry if we're a bit slow, guys. If you want us to speed up, just let us know. But we're just trying to have a bit of discussion around all these things. But let's continue a little bit here. So we're just going to go back to our home directory just because that's where we like to be. And what are we up to? Okay, so let's just make sure we got confirm that Juno D is available and that we're on the right version. So we're on version 9.0. I'm not going to do the long one. 9.0 is good enough for me. You can, I'll show it anyway. So you can actually output the long version, which shows all the packages that it uses on GitHub, and it'll give you the commit hash and also whatever build tags you're using and your Go version. So not really necessary. We know we're on version 9, and that's what we need for. Welcome, Todd. How you going, mate?
Hey, guys.
You're in the server dungeon?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Awesome, dude. So
for context, if you do the long version, that's typically what we use whenever we are doing an upgrade and maybe something went wrong. If something goes wrong, that's when this is really helpful. We're like, okay, so clearly someone must be off and we got something weird going on. Everyone do version -- long. We'll check the hash. It's good for debugging, but as an initial pass, just checking that you're on version 9 is totally sufficient.
Totally. All right, now let's bumble our way through this. So what I'm going to do is firstly init Juno D, and all this is going to do is just populate our configuration files. So we're going to call it Juno 1, and we're going to call this gone. So all this does is just sets gone as your node name in your config.toml, adds all the configuration files, creates your Juno D home directory, and adds Juno 1 into the configuration. Damn it. I knew that would happen.
I was looking at it and I was wondering, I was like, wait, you don't have to do // or -- chain ID?
Yeah, that's it. Damn it. I forewarned. I said I would stuff this up. So there's a couple of, yeah, there we go. That one's work. So that just gives you a whole heap of information. And your node ID, importantly, down the bottom there. If you ever need to use that, it's pretty easy to query, though. We might look at that later on. So what we will do first off is we might just replace the Genesis file first off. So just to make this easier.
So for context, so what you're looking at right here, this is JSON, example of JSON, all this output. And this is actually a Genesis file that you're looking at, but it's not correct, right? So in this JSON right here, you're not seeing, if there's a, let's see, if there's any venture capital money in there, right? Because those often have vesting accounts. And so you're not seeing that in there. You're not seeing, the different validator addresses. And so that's why you need to replace the Genesis file, because this is just like a default pumped out setup so that if you want to run like your own test net, this Genesis file will do just fine. You can just launch a chain. But for what we're doing, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, so I mean, you can, and there's some streams that the Frey's done with Callum. You can just add your validator in and start it straight up, like Schultze says. You just add an account, add your validator in, start it up, all good. Now, what I've done here is I just used JQ just to make this more palatable to your eyeballs, just to format it, and you can see. Yeah, it's just a pretty standard Genesis file there, but it's not the one that we need. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to remove the, well, actually we can, just as a quick thing, we can actually just cat this out and it should be the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks pretty similar.
This might have sorted it though, so it won't look quite the same, but yeah.
Potentially, yeah. But anyway, you get the picture. So we're just going to remove that Genesis file, and then we're going to download the real one. So at the moment, the information in the Juno documentation is incorrect, and we need to actually download the Genesis file from a different place, and that is currently detailed in the incident response repo, which is what we used when we booted back up. So here's the link to that. If you were interested in that, I just put it into the chat comments, and I am just going to copy paste out of here the wget command, which will get us our wget, and that is just downloading from Dimmy's server the tar of Phoenix 2. This might take a little second because it's 2 terabytes, I think. 2 gigabytes.
No, yeah, I think 2 gigs, not terabytes. That would be insanity.
Yeah, 2 gigabytes rather. Brain fart. Okay, so now we're just going to extract that with another tar command, and that. Oh, yeah, okay, that'll just put it straight into this. I won't even need to copy it. Anyway, put it straight into there. So if you did this in your home directory, which you normally would, you can just use a command like this, and that's just going to move that file. Actually, I'm going to do this anyway because it's actually got a different name. So this will just move it into our config file where we need it. There we go. So if we just have a look at this file now, you can see that we've got the genesis.json, and I'll cat that in a second, and it'll probably be spewing out information for half an hour. I'll cat it and then I'll stop it. But I'm just going to save our space here. I'm just going to remove this Genesis file, tar file, and I'm going to cat out this Genesis file, and you will see that it is quite a bit larger than the one that we just looked at. So that'll probably go for a fair amount of time if I just let it run.
So one thing that's worth mentioning is why exactly this is happening. So he talked about this is in the incident response repo. So the times there have been Juno halts, this is how you have to respond to that. You have to create a new Genesis file, which is basically saying this is the current state of the chain, like 1 block before it halted. Like everybody had this much amount. This is how they were delegating. This is how long until they undelegate. This is where they're redelegating. It has everything in there. And so during our the last halt, like you saw a lot of people talking about doing crisis invariants. And what those crisis invariants are making sure that when we were creating this new Genesis file, that no one was like messing with it, because that's the perfect time to be like, oh, well, it says that I have, 6 Juno, but I really think that I should have like 6 million Juno. And you could do that during this new fork, because now it's a new Genesis. And those crisis invariants, they're going to go through and they're actually going to go and check to make sure that no funny business has happened, right? And so, yeah, it takes 12 hours to run that, but those 12 hours make sure that there isn't suddenly 6 million Juno unaccounted for.
So just, a funny tidbit about that is that there is a bounty for improving the invariant checks. And there is a current PR in there that changes it from, 20 odd hours to a minute.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Who did it? Do you know?
Not offhand. They changed the methodology a little bit. So I think there needs to be some verification that it's accurate, but it's quite the improvement. So,
wow.
Yeah, I guess we'll see more from that in the next couple of months. But it's quite important in terms of chain downtime to make sure that we have a solution where we can boot it back up pronto, because it didn't actually take very long to A, come up with the fix, and B, muster up all the validators and get everyone to upgrade. The time, so that took less than a day, probably 12 hours or so.
Less. It was like 8.
Yeah, okay, so eight hours. And then a little bit of lead time to get everybody upgraded and into the invariant checks. And then, oh my God, like another entire day of invariant checks.
It's good for memes, though.
It's great for memes. Yeah. But a lot of people were saying, like, just skip the invariants. And a lot of people were. But that's why you don't. That's why you don't skip those invariants. So then people aren't fudging with the Genesis file.
So, I mean, it is okay for some people to skip invariants. Like if you're late to the party and everybody else has already done invariant checks, fine, skip them. It doesn't matter. As long as some people check them and that everybody, like if everybody's using the same file and some people check them, that's okay. As long as they've been checked by someone.
Yep.
Because if you try to use a different Genesis file, you're not going to be able to get onto the network anyway, because you'll get an app hash error. So as long as the majority of people are using the same Genesis file and, well, you know, greater than 67% are on the same file, and some of those people have done invariant checks, we should be good to go. And it doesn't matter if you have a beefcake machine, because it's a single-threaded process and takes forever. You can have 5,000 cores. It won't make any difference. You can have all the RAM on the planet. It won't make any difference. So it's just a big old hurry up and wait game. So one thing you can do here is you can check the char sum, and we're looking for something that ends in F3B. So if that's what we get here, then we're good with the Genesis. We've downloaded the right one and we've checked it and we're good to go. This will probably take a second, given how big the file is.
That's interesting that you do the last 3. I do the first 3. Makes no difference at all.
No, I mean, just you can check the whole thing if you're super paranoid, but I think if you get the last 3 or the first 3 correct or something in the middle correct, it's going to be like pretty okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to fudge that. I keep literally forgetting where we're up to in like, I'm glad I made some notes, because after we sit here and talk, I'm like, what was I doing?
I know. We're downloading the Genesis, and normally this is like minute 3 or 4 of setting up a server, like literally.
Literally.
So like 12 commands have been ran, and that's about it.
All right, so we've got F3B. That's what we were after. We're happy. I'm just going to go back to, why did I do that? Okay, doesn't matter.
Is it sad that I actually recognized the hash as being correct without having to look it up?
I do too, because 01111. I was like, yeah, I know that one.
Not sad. It's like thorough. You're a thorough person. Okay, so I've just put in the command here. So we've got .juno /config/config.toml. This is where all of your configuration for your P2P and your, I don't know, various things, all your chain configuration, all that type of stuff. So you can see from our init command before, it has made our moniker gone. Thank you. So we're not gonna change any ports or anything. Some people change ports depending on what they're doing with their setup. We're just gonna leave this pretty vanilla. And I don't think that we will actually need to, we need to add seeds. That's why I came in here. So what we're gonna do is go down to,
well, there is one thing we need to do with the RPC. If this is gonna be an RPC node, we have to open it up.
We do have to enable the RPC. So what we have, okay, here is the RPC. All right, so L address is the listen address for your RPC, and basically 127.0.0.1 is more or less the local host. So we're going to change the listen address to 0.0.0.0, and that will just listen for everything, basically. Leave the port as 26657. Now, a note will be that we will have to enable that in our firewall. Otherwise, nobody will be able to connect. And when we're enabling things in our firewall, we'll actually also enable our P2P port so that people can connect to this node when they're through the P2P, so that we can get connections from other nodes. So we're not a bad person just connecting out and not letting people connect in. So all these settings are just to do with the amount of people that can connect and subscribe to your RPC. We're not going to change anything. We're just going to leave it reasonably vanilla. So you'll see the listen address for P2P. This is the nodes talking back and forth with Tendermint is already on 0.0.0. So it's comes pre-configured to listen. And that's what we want. And we need to set some, we're not going to do peers. So usually when you're starting a new network or something like that, you would set your, I tend to just send persistent peers when I'm starting a new network because I don't fully trust the seeds. But later on, when I'm just starting nodes on an already running network, I tend to just use seeds only because sometimes you get various issues with persistent peers if they hang. Anybody have like any preference or comments on that?
I basically never use persistent peers. So there's been a lot of recurring issues on networks starting up where, you know, whenever a new network starts, there's always this kind of like moment of excitement where everyone's like, all right, everyone needs to share their persistent peers. And then someone that's dormant achiever creates one sheet that has like them lined out per person. And then you have someone else that comes together and like compiles them all into this one huge block that you copy and paste in. And suddenly you've got like 80 persistent peers, but you can only accept 40 input for some networks, right? And inevitably, some of those persistent peers are going to die off just from entropy, I guess. But those still take up a slot in your peer list. So if I start a network, it's very rare that I use persistent peer unless they're my own persistent peers. And I recommend that for basically everyone. Don't share your persistent peers. Don't worry about that. A couple of people, Todd is one of them, Poco2 is another, will typically have seeds going, connect to those. And the purpose of the seed is to connect peers together to create your address book.
Yeah, it's quite a bit less work for the node, you know, if you don't use persistent peers. I think, you know, some of the chains where people are having problems with blocks and pairing, it's because they've got a long list of persistent peers in there. It's just trust PEX, man. It works.
Well,
you know.
So here's the funny thing though, to add on to that, on Secret Network, Secret Nodes, they took down their RPC nodes for maintenance, and they're one of the main persistent peers. He restarted one server, and 8 validators stopped signing. The server came back up, and they started signing again, and he just started laughing. Yeah.
Wow.
Not even the validator server, just one of his nodes.
Yeah, I don't think I have persistent peers set at all on Secret. So
that's not to criticize Secret at all, but just something funny that happened because people were exclusively using persistent peers.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do you find persistent peers, you might say? Well, sometimes they are in the network directory in the GitHub of the respective chain. However, thanks to Tom of EcoStake, we can just go directly to Cosmos directory.
.directory, yeah.
And go to the Juno section. And then on the little nodes box down the bottom right-hand corner, we can click on seeds. And of course, there is Todd's seed. Is this still up, Todd?
Yeah.
So let's go with that one.
But add Polkas too, just to
well,
just to be safe.
Polkas isn't in the Cosmos directory, but how about we'll add Putmos? How about that? It should work. So we've got Putmos and we've got Blockpain. I know I can trust Blockpain. I don't know about Putmos, but presumably it's not going to feed us bad peers.
I don't know if you can trust Blockpain.
Starting to sweat a little bit.
I trust you whether you like it or not, man. I mean, sometimes I will put nothing in there and I'll copy an address book that I know is full of stuff. So,
oh yeah, that's a great way to do it
that's
too.
the fastest way usually to get a lot of peers. So,
yeah. So for those who don't know, Todd just a second ago mentioned PEX, and that is peer exchange. So basically, your node will just keep exchanging peers with seeds and other nodes, and it populates your address book. And so usually, if you have a working node, the address book will be filled with addresses of other working nodes. And so it's a very easy way just to bootstrap a node with addresses by copying across the address book. And just a note, if you copy across the address book before you do an unsafe reset for whatever reason, it'll delete it unless you use the keep adder book flag.
I wish they didn't do that. Every time I do unsafe reset all, every time I see it say I should remove the address book, and I'm like, okay, go find some seeds or something.
Just -- keep -- adder -- book. It'll keep it. So I've petitioned bloody Pokachoo to put that into his state sync configuration on his website, because everyone copy paste that and delete their book. They should try and at least keep the address book. Anyway, so as a validator operator, here's a flag that you would normally change, or a configuration that you would normally probably change to save some disk space. This is the transaction index, and if you change this KV to null, you will no longer have an index, which isn't a problem as a validator because you don't really query your validators. You usually do it.
But aren't you making a RPC node?
Yeah, I'm just making a note of that. So in this case, we're going to leave the index here. Otherwise, you will have one completely useless RPC. Well, not completely, but you'll nerf out about half of the functionality of what you would want out of a RPC. For those, sorry.
I would say, I mean, this kind of falls into like one of the dirty secrets of the Cosmos, which is that most validators, they actually don't run archive nodes, right? I can only think of 2 archive node runners offhand.
One of
them's here, and another one's Strangelove.
And I don't run archive nodes on very many chains. I've got let's see, Terra Classic archive nodes, and I have a Juno archive node pre-fork, but not current chain. But that, that's totally needed. And then secret, that's it.
Yeah. So we're on, like 32 networks, right? I guarantee you there's probably 2 or 3 networks without a single archive. Guarantee it. And that's
as long as somebody has all the blocks, it's still safe.
Yeah.
Do you think Carver has an archive anywhere?
They might. I think they might.
All right. So moving on. Okay, so the other configuration file that you might want to change stuff in is your app.toml. So nano juno config app.toml. Okay, so this is where you set your app configuration, and you would normally put something in here. So, I mean, yeah, you can leave this blank, but if all the validators have, you will accept things that are sent to your RPC, like transactions that are sent to your RPC that don't have fees if you don't set this, but those transactions will just keep hanging around in mempool because most validators should have minimum gas prices set. So those transactions will just end up timing out at some point. So set this. Be a good person. If you're running an RPC, set your minimum gas prices. And I will just try and find that real quick in the Juno docs. Mainnet.
It's under joining mainnet.
Joining.
I think there's even a sed command for it.
The old sed.
There it is, under set minimum gas prices.
Set minimum gas. Yeah. So, oh man, the whole thing's just okay. I'll just get this out of the sed command.
I wonder how many people have set this one without knowing that. So there's two minimums that he's going to pop up here. One that's for Juno and one that is for a RPC asset. I wonder how many people have set it without actually knowing what that goes to.
Todd, which one of those is the escape? It's that one, right?
It's a backslash.
Yeah, so the / is part of the IBC denom. Yeah, so when you've got I just copied that out of the sed command, and when you've got the sed command, it's got a bunch of escapes for slashes and other stuff. So anyway, so that's in quotes. That's good. So what Schultz was saying, yeah, this sets a minimum gas price with firstly, the Juno denom, and secondly, an IBC denom. And you can just take my word for it, unless you want to do a trace. That IBC denom is Atom. So,
and so what that means is technically most of us validators, you could pay all fees in Atom, but Kepler doesn't support it.
But you can do it manually. If you're a CLI ninja, you can just spray the Atom around. We don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what we have here is, so this is pruning. So you can do various things with your pruning to save space. If you're a RPC, you would probably not prune the shit out of it. Probably just default is fine, unless, depending on what your RPC is for. But if you want to be able to query a little bit of history, you'd probably just leave the pruning to default. If you want to be able to query all of the history on that RPC, then you would leave pruning to none, which will keep all of the history and not delete anything. If you're a validator and you're running sort of a disposable type node setup, or you just want to keep your nodes light on storage space, you can do some more aggressive pruning. I tend to use so you change that to custom, and you can set various keep recents and pruning intervals. I usually use something in the 100 to 200 range for pruning keep recent, and something in the 10 to 60 range in pruning interval. So a lot of people just make this pruning keep recent 100 and pruning interval 10. Todd, do you want to tell us why that's a bad idea?
Well, it's complex. It's even more important not to do that if you're running a Sentry. But pruning can be intensive, especially when things get busy. So you usually want to have your node pruned at a different time, right? Wow, that's hilarious.
A different time to everybody else.
Yeah, and you want your sentries pruning at a different time than your validator. That way, they don't get that mempool data, or relay your pre-vote late, that kind of thing. So yeah. So and we've actually seen this on Osmosis a long time ago now, but everybody had pruning set to default, and then and then all of a sudden you'd see a whole bunch of misses, and it's like, I can't remember who figured it out, but it was like, hey, that's when everybody's pruning. So
yeah, if you look at ping.pub and you look at the uptime screen with all the green bars, and then there's just stripes of red bars, that's because everybody's got the same pruning setting.
It might be that. There's actually a lot of reasons that can happen. Yeah. Often, a lot of times that's the validator that signed that block didn't wait, or they're slow. There's so many reasons that can happen, but yeah, that's exactly what it did cause, though.
So what we do to, and this is directly related, we use Horcrux, which connects to multiple nodes, and we make sure that our prune settings are different between those nodes, so that when one's pruning, the other one can make sure it gets the block. So yeah, exactly right. Obviously, different architectures, whether you got your validator with sentries or you've just got a signer and sentries, or however you're doing it. But Yeah. Anyway, moving on. I think that's probably all you could probably open up the
REST.
The API. Yeah, the REST API, seen as though we're doing a RPC/API node. So, and the amount of times I've set enable equals enable, I don't know why I do it, but instead of like your Boolean, I just put enable in there, and I'm just like, why isn't it working? I've stopped doing that now, but I used to do it a lot.
And as somebody that sometimes uses public nodes on other chains that I don't validate on, I always appreciate it when they expose gRPC as well.
I think it's on by default, right? So we're not going to turn on Rosetta. Yeah, gRPC's on, but yeah, you'd have to make sure that you expose the port for that.
So what is Rosetta? I've never actually messed with that one before.
Yeah, Rosetta's pretty cool, actually. So it's a project that Coinbase did, and it creates a unified API for talking to blockchains, getting account history, getting balances, all that stuff, all the stuff that they need to do as an exchange. And so it's a spec and then a reference implementation. And so other blockchains have implemented it as well. So it's, one API for every blockchain kind of thing.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it is really neat. And I'm surprised it's not used more, but yeah.
I mean, everyone likes to make their own spec. That's why.
Yeah.
There's so many different TOML, YAML, JSON.
Yeah. All right. So one other thing we're going to do on this node, just to show, if you change this snapshot interval from 0, you'll start to become a snapshot server for state sync.
Here's a gotcha. You're pruning at 420 blocks.
Oh, yeah.
If your snapshot interval is longer than your prune interval, you will app hash.
Really?
Panic in a app hash. Yeah.
So let's go with 410.
Yeah.
How about that?
I can't tell you how many times I've made that mistake.
That might actually explain why my secret nodes are sometimes like falling behind and require some recovery. Because I'm hosting some public state stinks, and it's definitely not the same pruning interval.
All right, that's all we're going to change there, and we're going to move on. So, what do we have? We've got quite a few things set. Now, let's not do a systemd just yet. Let's just start it, see what happens. Haven't missed anything, have I, guys?
A D?
Firewall?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Thanks, Todd. Firewall. Yeah. All right. So we need to add several things to the firewall. Starting with let's go with the RPC. No, let's start with the P2P port. So what this is going to do is allow from any external IP to put any port and 266.665. God damn it. 26656 is our P2P port. Damn it. Sudo. There you go. So here's where passwordless sudo will be handy. We won't have to put in a password every time we do this.
That's okay. So nice.
So we also are going to enable the RPC port, and we're also going to enable the API port. And why not? We opened it up, so let's put in the gRPC port as well. So that's enabled the IPv4 and IPv6 IP range for all of those ports. Now let's just have a look at the status to make sure that all looks right. Oh, God damn it.
Hey, Todd, I'm curious. So we open these ports. Let's say we don't turn the node on right now. Is there any real kind of downside of having those ports open? Can anyone get in here?
No. I mean, a port scan will show it as closed instead of, no response. So, I mean, but that's about it. I do want to say though, UFW is really easy to use, but also as a validator, it's kind of dangerous. And the reason for that is a lot of us run various microservices or like, websites that plug into the node or whatever. If you use UFW on a node that's running Docker, it will not block the rules it inserts are later in the IP tables chain than the Docker rules. So
what?
Any setting you put in through UFW, it does not apply to containers. So
wow.
I've screwed that up a few times, and so I don't use UFW.
What do you use instead?
IP tables.
IP tables, yeah.
I mean, I have a script that does it, but actually I configure 100% everything via Ansible now, so Ansible handles it. But
Todd, tell us where I can see the IP table.
As root, do the way I prefer to do it is IP tables -save if you have it installed. And that'll actually dump the rules as you would enter them instead of because it's all one word. IP tables -save, all one word. Yeah.
So will this show us what's in there?
Yep.
Okay.
That shows you what UFW created for you. So
yeah. Oh, there you go. Quite a lot of stuff in there. You can see why that is a daunting task to do manually. So here we are here. All right, let's try to start the damn thing, eh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Fingers crossed. This usually works.
All right, Todd, let's see if you got your seeds up.
I mean, this shouldn't take too long.
Are we going to have to go through the invariants?
Oh, sorry, we missed the whole. I knew I was missing something. So, okay, so we're going to actually restore this from a Pokachu, depending on how big it is at the moment, a Pokachu snapshot, righto? So that's one thing. At the moment, guys, we have no data. There is no data on this node. And if we were to start it up, we would have to sit there and wait for 25 hours while it did invariant checks before it would start. It would eventually
just do skip invariants.
Yeah, and then you only have to wait 8 hours.
Yeah.
So for a Pokachu snapshot, we need to actually install LZ4, which we need snapd for apparently. Oh, already had it. I think Snap comes pre-installed now on Ubuntu, right? 20.4.
Yeah, it depends
on where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, there's where you install it from. Like, on AWS or most cloud providers, it's pretty heavy install. But like Hetzner and like OVH, I think it's the Ubuntu image they use is lighter, so I don't think it's on there.
Yeah. Oh my god. What do you reckon, guys? Wait 10 minutes or do state sync?
State sync.
Yeah, go ahead and sync.
Let's guess.
Which may also take 10 minutes.
I mean, it can. Sometimes it's quick. Depends on whether you catch a bloody peer or not. So, guys, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to this address, which is Pokachu's configuration. And I'm just going to copy out his script, and I'm going to stop that. I'm going to make a state sync file, and I'm just going to paste that script in there. And what this does, it just gets the latest block height from the RPC. It'll set a block height for our target for the state sync, and we're going to minus 2,000 blocks just so we know we're not like right at the head because it'll tend to fail. And then we get the trust hash from the RPC for that block height, and then we use a bunch of sed to throw all this information into our RPC servers. No, what is this? So what are we adding in here, guys? RPC servers. Oh, yeah. So that goes, the RPC servers is to do with your state sync configuration in your config.toml. And all this is state sync configuration in your config.toml. And then it'll throw in a seed. Or is it deleting seeds?
I think it's adding them. Is it? Because there's none listed.
I don't. So, no, it's deleting them. I don't want that. I just added them. All right, go away. I don't know why you've got that, Pikachu. We don't want that.
Do you need a closing quote there?
We don't need those. Is this right?
You still need a quote.
I quote?
Double quote.
Why isn't that working? Yeah. Oh, yeah, righto.
And maybe get rid of the last pipe.
We don't need that pipe. Hopefully this works. Right. All right, so we'll save that, and then we'll check mod it. Change mod. What is it? State sync. And then we'll try and run it. God. What do you reckon? Just I don't need. We'll just bloody.
So there's basically like 3 ways to sync up is what's going on right here. To sync to where to head, you can basically sync every single block, which is what an archive node would do. You could use a snapshot, which is someone basically copies their data file and then someone else, we download it and use that. Like we just trust that that's correct. And state sync is basically saying you get a trusted node. It gives you a hash saying, hey, this block at block 200, the hash is this. And then we're like, yeah, okay, great. And then we just kind of start at block 200 to move on from there and don't worry about anything that came before it.
Yeah, state sync's interesting. I think a lot of people misunderstand how it works. Like that the RPC nodes are actually sending the state sync. That's actually only used for validating the snapshots that the P2P peers offer.
That I didn't know.
It's a light client verification of that. Yeah. So, which is cool. You know, I mean, that's how IBC works. You know, it's all the same type of verification there. Have a trust height and everything after that. If it's valid, you trust it, right? So.
Okay, guys, what I've done here is I've just, for the sake of simplicity, used Pikachu's script verbatim, and I just went back and added in my seeds because we obviously don't know how to configure. Sed is like hard to write in, and without sitting there and staring at it for a second, you won't really know what's going on. So just because our node started to do something there before, it might have started to populate a database. It probably didn't, but just to be sure, I also did an unsafe reset there on the home directory, which just basically deletes all the data that might be in the database. And I also, after I ran that state sync script, I just went and checked that it put the configuration correctly into the config.toml and re-added the seeds. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try and start it up again, and it should be a lot quicker this time. Oh no, yeah. Is that right?
Will it still require crisis invariance? I don't think so.
No, it's
just trying to start, I think. It should be quicker than this.
think it's that big old, yeah. You don't even let it happen. It like pops off a little bit and you're like, meh, nobody needs to see it.
Ah, there you go. Away it goes. Okay, so now it's discovering some snapshots. So hopefully we actually get some persistent pairs.
What?
Some good pairs.
My DNS failed on my seed. My seed is not live. Oh,
lucky we put in bloody Putmos.
Man, I'm embarrassed. Man, I've been talking you up all over.
There we go. Oh no. So nothing much happening here. It's just it's got some addresses to dial from Putmos. Thanks, mate.
Oh, you know what? That's an old that's old docs. When we did this last fork, I renamed the seed. The host name is now Juno-seed-new.
You didn't update Cosmos directory, mate.
Oh man.
Or the chain registry.
A PR in my near future.
Okay, so we're getting chunks. We're 6 chunks. Oh god. Change the bloody setting, Poketube. Make it like 500 or something, man. No one wants 2,000 blocks.
I think you can change it to 500. I don't think you need to go that far back if you don't want to.
No, his snapshot size is 2,000, I think. So, like, we go back 2,000 to make sure that we're into one of his snapshots.
Yeah, that's exactly why you go back a couple thousand. Because a lot of people will snapshot every 1,000, and if you get a slow state sync, it will. You can actually have the other nodes prune before you do it, or if you're too short of a time frame, nobody will have snapshotted yet, and you'll just sit there and spin for an hour. So
yeah, so if you're trying to get if you don't minus that 2,000 off, you'll go pretty much to the head. And if you're on the head, the snapshot won't happen for like another 1,000 or 2,000 blocks or whatever the setting is. So you'll be trying to retrieve a snapshot that doesn't exist. So you'll have to keep spinning your wheels until that 2,000 blocks is passed, and then it takes a snapshot, and then you can get it. So that's why we do the minus 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever the snap. Basically, you just minus the snapshot interval to make sure that you are going to get a snapshot.
Interesting.
So we're getting chunks, which means we've found some peers and we're connected to a few things, and we're almost there. So, I mean, overall, snapshot's pretty quick. Definitely would have taken a fairly long time to download the 12 gigabyte snapshot from at the speed we were going. So,
yeah, you're almost done already.
Yeah, we're there. So, oof. Where's our?
Hasn't applied yet.
Yeah, not on yet.
Need more addresses.
What's happened here? 56. Did it fail? Applying snapshot. What's happened here, Todd? Applied. Oh, we started again? Oh, no. Oh, it's still
applying. It's applying.
Yeah.
It'll continue to discover even though you're applying.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it fetched. So all those other chunks were fetching. Now it's applying them. Fair way through there. Oof. So we are at 1 hour and 43 minutes. So I think, should we do a system D just for completeness once this finishes, or what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Add in a daemon. Just wondering. Oh. Not going to do that. Might actually just start a new window here and go grab a configuration from elsewhere.
Todd, why is it 56 snapshots? Why is that the total?
That's how many chunks are in that 2,000 blocks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the size. It breaks it down into, I can't remember how big, but that's how big state is right now. So if you were to do a state export and divide it by 56, that's about how big it would be. I don't know. Let me look.
I mean, I guess the thing to know about this is, since we're like asking Todd questions and stuff, the most important thing about being a validator is really just like being curious and persistent. Obviously, we don't know everything. There's always someone that knows more. Like, if Zachy pops into a conversation, we're almost always like, we're about to learn something, because there's always someone that knows more and can teach us something. And that's kind of the important part about us going through the security, is that's not really something that's written in the documentation too much. There's a couple places where you'll see security being talked about, but it's kind of like just a default thing that's kind of assumed. But the reality is, a lot of us just don't know it, right? You don't know when you should get started.
All right. So each of those chunks is 10 megabytes.
Okay.
So state is 540 megabytes right now, or 560 megabytes.
And we are on, and you will see in your, why isn't this showing our catching up? Catching up true. Okay, guys. So you can see here, this is what happens on a freshly started up node. You end up with catching up until you're caught up to the head, and then that will equal false. So right now, we're just catching up those between the snapshot that we had minus around about 2,000. So wherever that snapshot ended, we just need to catch up those extra blocks, which could be up to around 2,000 up to the head. So this shouldn't take very long. And you can see when I did this one here before, we were at block height 530, and now we're at block height 8779. So we're punching through them.
And we're at like 4.410 million blocks. So we've got 1,000 more blocks to go to sync.
Yeah. Which should be pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's do our systemd file while that's going anyway. So we'll just go to this other tab that I've got here. And to do a systemd, we're just going to create a new file in the etc systemd system directory, and we're just going to call this Juno d.service. Let's go with that. Now, this is, oh, that's wrong. So I'll just take a little configuration here from a text file, bang this in. So basically, we just give it a description, and it can start after the network's online. The username that we're using is Juno, and that's correct. That's the username that we have. The home directory is home Juno go bin. That looks all right, and we know that our Juno D binary is here. However, if we weren't sure where it was, maybe you're using root user, which would put it in a different location. It would be /root /go/bin. So if you need to clarify where your binary is, you can just do back in the CLI, you can type in which Juno D, and it will tell you the location that the binary is. And then we just start it. So that's the same command as we just ran before. Restart always, restart after 3 seconds so we don't get errors. And the limit number of files, this is 4,096. You can make this a lot more. If you don't set this, your node will likely crash at some time for not having a big enough file limit. So one thing of note, like the reason this happens is because all open connections over TCP are classed as a file, I believe, right, Todd?
Yeah.
And so once we get heaps and heaps of connections and heaps of, local files talking to your database or local connection to the database. You just end up with a bunch of these what's classed as files open, and if you have too many, the daemon will crash. So we set that to a more reasonable number.
I set mine to infinity. It's
okay. That's an option.
And
so is that just INFINI? Is that infinity? Yeah, and that works. Cool.
Yep.
Really?
That'll set it to whatever the max is for the OS, which is 1.4 million something.
Also worth noting that you can do this outside of this service file, right? Todd, doesn't have to be in this service file, does it? You set like a global limit or something.
Yeah, you can set it in your security.conf, I believe. Set your U limits there. It's hard and soft, but you may not want to do that for other reasons. But I mean, if it's a single purpose server, probably wouldn't hurt.
Let's just reading a couple of these. All right. Okay, so that is our service file, and it looks like, dang it, we had a crash.
Yep, and that's the error you'll get when you prune a state that it's trying to archive.
So it should be okay if we restart that, right? We'll just fix this pruning. There you go. Misconfiguration will break your stuff. So maybe just put like, oop. Should work.
Yeah, because you have to multiply the keep every.
Does it have to be a multiple? Does it?
Yeah. Well, if you were pruning at, yeah, you might want to double check what you said, because
that probably still won't work.
Then. The snapshot settings, you have to multiply that, and your keep recent has to be larger than that. You know how many you're keeping. So it needs to be 1640, right? So you're good now.
Let's just go.
Yeah, now you're going to crash again.
Oh, am I? Did I get too far?
Because you're pruning at 2,000 blocks, and you're trying to keep snapshots for 4,000.
Ah, yes. Righto. That'll work, right?
I always go. See, I don't know what'll happen if there'll be a race at that 4,000 mark, right? So I always go higher, at least one higher, on my keep recent. Yeah.
That's great. That has to work. In any case, it won't get there in the context of this tutorial, so it shouldn't crash again.
I think your database is toast already. So
yeah. Oh, you reckon?
Oh yeah.
Dang it.
When it does that panic, it never recovers. So you might be lucky though. You might be lucky. I've never.
Can you do the
You recovered.
It's indexing. So
wow, that's amazing.
I was going to say, can you walk back the block? Use the what is that command called? Where you just basically go back one block.
It prunes the latest state. I don't know. I don't know if that command actually works.
It was put there for like recovering from app hashes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, that's in Juno now?
I'm not sure if it's active. The command's there. I'm not sure if it's working.
Huh.
So I guess we're catching up again. Oops. Okay, catching up again. In any case, we know it's working again, so we can stop this, and we will enable Juno E is what we called it. I'll call it .service. You don't have to put the .service there, but just to remove confusion with the Juno D binary, we'll say we're going to enable that file. So what that does is that
you got an extra S. Yeah.
So that adds it's to the startup. So if your node restarts, it'll just automatically start this service file when the node starts up, if for some reason you reset it. And the other thing we do is after we've enabled it, we can start it. And I've already started that other binary, so this will work. I stopped that other binary. I stopped it.
Why did you not have to do a daemon reload?
You only have to do a daemon reload if you change a file. So when you freshly create it, you don't need to reload. It's only after, say if I went in and made a modification now to the service file, I'd have to daemon reload.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what that looks like, folks, is apparently there's daemon re something else as well. Actually, that's okay. So we talked before about tab completion, right? So I'm lazy. I don't want to type reload. So if I press tab, when it gets to RE and I know that there's more to it and it makes a little noise, that means that there's more than one thing that start like that, right? So you can just keep hitting tab and then it'll tell you the other things that are there. So in this case, so in this case, it's two different commands. So we'll just add in another letter and tab complete because we're lazy.
So you know the trick with Tindermint chains on autocomplete?
No.
Oh, here, I'll paste something over to you in Discord. You'll like this.
Oh no.
This is something I put in all my servers .bash RC.
Look out. This is
command completion on it's in the Game of Nodes chat. It gives you command completion for all the different chains. You know, just add the name to the list here. Did you find it yet?
Apparently,
I didn't know you could do that.
I can't even go and see that right now because apparently I'm downloading a shitload of updates for I just opened up Discord and it's like 10 updates. That's how long it's been since I reset it. Anyway, so that should be alive now. So the way we can check is now I don't know why this does this, Todd, but this is a new node and I've just done all of this configuration. And when I do journal control, I'm almost certain that this is going to say I don't have the right permissions. So
yeah, you have to be part of I can't remember which
the journal
ADM
group, right?
the ADM group.
Why is that not working?
Now that is weird right there. That no journal files were found.
Ooh, James knows the solution to this one. He's helped me fix this before.
Yeah, I tried pasting that command into the private chat, but it didn't format well.
What is it called? I'm sure you can restart the journal daemon and it all. I just don't know what it's called. Does anyone know what it's called? The journal management daemon? No? All right. Anyway.
I think it's journal D, isn't it?
Is it?
No, wrong.
Tab complete.
I don't know. Maybe it's yeah, tab complete. It wasn't giving me anything. Yeah, I don't know.
Do a ls/etsy/systemd/system. List out all the different service files and see.
ls/
Sorry, ls-la space / the Etsy systemd system path.
Oh, this is gonna have shitloads.
It is. There's Juno D. I don't see it.
That's not shitloads, actually. Either way, look.
Oh, it's systemd-journald.service.
God damn it. Journal D. Is that system? Is that right?
Yep, that looks right.
All right. Probably still won't work after all that. There we go.
That's
nice.
better.
There we go. Knew the fix, didn't know the name of the thing. Anyway, so we're back up to head and we're making blocks. So I guess just one thing we should do is just prove that it works by opening the RPC up to that IP address, which I don't remember what it was.
The IP address, do you want me to read it out?
That's right, got it right here.
Oh, that's right, it changed. Right.
So if I go to the web browser and I put in that address and I : 26657, let me share this screen.
Now is the time to DDoS it.
Window, Brave tab. Here we go. All right, so we have a working RPC here. Then we succeeded. And if we wanted to see if the API is working, we can change the port to 1317, and we should have an API page load up. There we go. Boom. Well, I mean, that was probably the longest it will ever take us to start a node.
Yeah, I did a Sentry node last night. I'm probably gonna bring up a validator for a Koch very soon, and I think the playbook took 4 minutes. So
Nice.
I mean, that's what most are used to, right? I mean, that's after the host is set up. Obviously, if you're running hardware, it takes a little bit longer to get everything installed. But yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming and watching us fluff about for the better part of, well, for over 2 hours now to load a node. I mean, everybody in this chat seems to be pretty knowledgeable, but hopefully some people get some value out of this when they're, trying to do various things with starting up a node. But I mean, the purpose of this also was not to be fast. Like we said previously, the purpose of this was to just have some general discussion around various things of loading up a node just to improve the knowledge of whoever's watching this. I hope that some of it was educational to some of you guys, even though you seem, reasonably pretty skilled. Obviously able to tell us stuff that we don't know as well. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week when the rest of the gang's back. Thanks for dropping in, Todd. You guys didn't have anything else that you wanted to say?
If you want to make it a validator from this point, you just run the create validator command, and there you're up and live.
We were going to do that, but we very much have run out of. Well, I mean, we haven't run out of time. We could do it. It's just that by the time we talked about it, it would be another half an hour.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe we can pick it up another day and do something like that. If you guys have any requests of other things that we can step through and talk about, maybe it's some sort of monitoring solutions. What's BadgerBot? Need edit, etc. And change mode. Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Change mode to what? So anyway, usually BadgerBot, usually what happens is this happens when I start a fresh node all the time. I just reboot it and then it's good to go. All the journals work and everything. So it's just for some reason when you first start it doesn't seem to add to the journal unless you restart the journal service. Thanks for coming, Rama. Much appreciated. Let's sign off. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.